go cover in this section, I would call the sixth area of enterprise security, and that's pretty much data models / data acceleration. I'm going to reference down below other videos I've done with data models because there's a lot of material about that. But the basic concept of a data model is you have many different data sources coming into Splunk. And some of them will cover the exact same data. Say you have firewall data coming in. That firewall data will cover some network traffic. Maybe you have a Zeek Bro Corelight sensor that's got network traffic coming in. You could have host logs coming from syslog from your Linux servers. You could have Windows event logs that are host logs. And while they cover similar concepts, host-based logs and authentication, you have lots of different authentication systems. They could use different terms in their in the log. So for example, your firewall might call a log a source IP, being the IP that created the network traffic, whereas a Zeek log would call it ID ID.org H. It's a totally different field. Data models say, you know what, let's have a common information model. That's what Splunk will call it, is their SIEM, and we're going to call all the same thing, all these fields that are similar, we're going to call them the same thing, and we're going to put basically an alias on top of it so that I can call any data that's related to network traffic, and it will pull all the different logs together. I can build dashboards, and I build towards a common data model instead of trying to build a dashboard for my Palo Alto firewall, a dashboard for this firewall, a dashboard for this network sensor, a dashboard for host inventory from Windows, etc. Instead, you want to have very generic high level that cover concepts. And so if we go into Splunk, if you go to enterprise security and you come up here and go to data models, you'll see the data models that come straight out of the box with enterprise security. And so you could have logs dealing with authentication. And in there, they're going to have common fields that you want to do. And so you'll map your stuff to this common information model, and then you can have dashboards solely based off authentication. And it doesn't matter whether it came from a web server, whether it came from LDAP, whether it came from SSH. They're all authentication logs. They all use the same fields, and you can query across all of them, have your alerts work, etc. And as we've discussed in correlation searches before, the correlation searches are generic, and they're going to search across data models. And so you got to have your stuff mapped to a data model. And for this thing, I have done previous videos, look below. Cribble, I highly recommend. If your data isn't pretty much already CIM compliant, look into Cribble. Cribble's going to make your job, what I'm going to do here, so much easier. I've demoed Cribble. I've got a whole bunch of people saying, wow, Cribble is just amazing. You can see it up here. When I say Cribble, people, I'm talking CRIBL. I don't work for them. They don't pay me anything, but I will go and tell you that this is an amazing product, and it's free unless you start ingesting massive amounts of data on it. But for like a home use, or there's a lot of ways you don't need, it's not a, you can work around their license. It's not a big deal. They want it out there. And so it's just a great product to be able to get all your stuff into the common information model. But I showed that, and you'll see it in the videos below how easy it was to do. The thing is, I got comments, could you do it without Cribble? We don't have Cribble. We got to do it the old-fashioned way. So I'm going to do a few videos in a row of taking my Corelight logs and turning them into CIM compliant logs. And the very first log I'm going to work on is, if I come over here, we can see some here. I've got network traffic. I've got network traffic in my Corelight logs. I've got web in my Corelight logs. And I also have, I think what is it? There is SS certificates X509. I'll have to figure out where that's at, but there is basically you've got encryption. And so I've got that there. And so those are the three that I'm going to cover. The first I'm going to do is network traffic. And so if we come over here, we can see the network traffic, and I'm going to look at this and go, okay, what do we got here? If I open it up, we can see that we go in, I hit edit, I'm going to hit pivot. all traffic. I've got options, all traffic, track by action. I'm just at the high level, all traffic, and I can, oops, we can see that I have data in there, but I won't have all the fields. We need to actually get my data modeled. And so the end goal is that when I'm done, this will fill out and I'll be able to search based off rows. So for example, if I go look at my dest IP, I've got some dest IPs, and that's because I have a data model on here. Anyway, we're going to come back. We'll show what I'm missing. Let's just jump to that. So first thing I look at, I come to overview of common information model. I did a search. I just write Splunk CIM data models, and I get this overview of the Splunk common information model. You scroll down a little bit, you get the data models. I'm going to use network traffic, and it will tell you what each of these fields mean. So in the all traffic, you want action, app, bytes, bytes in, bytes out, dest IP, etc. So the way I make this work is I'm going to come over here to Corelight conn, and these are what the raw logs look like. And you can see if I have a TA, which is an app put out by Corelight that modifies some of these files. And so if you've got a good TA, you might be a good way of the way there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these raw logs. I'm going to say, well, how many do I have? So I've got ID org H, ID org P, ID response H, ID response P. If I look at this network traffic, I notice they use dest IP, dest port, source IP, source port. So those aren't going to match. I go look at this. Okay, the action taken by the network, that would be allowed, block, teardown. Do I have something like that in my logs? If I look down here, I can see that I have the action allowed. All right, then I'm good to go. I can make that work. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another page. And the easiest way for me, this is what works for me. You do what works for you. I'm going to come into these logs, and I'm going to go table, and I'm just going to basically go down this list, and not this list here, and say, all right, action. Yep, I definitely have an action field, so I want to put that in my query, table action. And then what's the next field? App, the application protocol, the app required. And so do I have an app? Let's go look. So if I do app, and say I just run that, we can see that I have a problem. I do not have an action and I don't have an app. So I'm going to have to get that fixed. We're going to close this pivot for now because, all right, what about bytes? Total count of bytes handled by the device interface. So if I write bytes, I'm going to see that I don't have that either. Bytes in, bytes out. Yeah, I definitely want to use those and they should be there. So I'm just going to keep going down that list. Bytes in, bytes out. And we'll start with those 5, just because I don't want to bore you to death. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to go look at this. So what we're going to do, we're going to skip this action first. We're going to come into these bytes in, bytes out. That's really simple enough. Notice I don't have those fields, but I definitely have logs. So if we come back to our original logs here, we can see that we have missed bytes, org IP bytes. I know there's another, there should be response bytes. And so response bytes is my destination bytes, org is my source bytes. And so the first thing I'm going to do to make this work is I'm going to go eval bytes in, and bytes in would be the ones being sent by the source, the org. So it's going to be this little org field, org bytes. Copy that, eval bytes in equals that. And now if I click do this, I now have bytes in. Now we need bytes out. And I'm going to say that no bytes in is a bad thing. So let's do fill null value equals 0. And we're going to say that bytes in, when there's nothing there, it's going to go with a 0. That way I don't have empty fields. Empty fields, I'm just going to tell you, will cause you problems because you're going to be using accelerated data models and they're going to use a lot of stats commands. Stats does not handle null. It'll just say the thing doesn't exist. So I like to have stuff in there. So we need a bytes in, we need a bytes out. Oops. So eval bytes out equals, what would be the field? Rest bytes. So we copy that. And now if I follow that, and we're going to need to make this have 0 as well. Oops. It's going to be bytes out. My bad. Now I have those fields. And bytes doesn't exist. There is no field here that adds the two together. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do an eval bytes equals bytes in plus bytes out. And we're going to put a 0 here too. That'll fill in that. Now we just got to find the action. Okay, an action is actually based off of this conn state. So what they've done is, what Corelight did is they made an automatic lookup, and they basically look for when action is this, then it's allowed, because it wants your fields to be allowed, blocked, and tear down. So I'm actually going to steal this lookup because it actually exists. All my icons are gone. That's interesting. Where are my lookups? I'm going to jump onto the Corelight TA because I'm lazy. And if I go to lookups, actions, lookup editor. This can take a lot of time. This is why Splunk will tell you need pro services to come in. But if you know your data, it's all good. You don't have to have it. Action. Let's flip this to Corelight. 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 I don't know if I even use the Corelight app because I use Cribble to fix it. Oh, that would stink. All right, well, we're going to just jump here. I'm not going to have them all filled out correctly. What we're going to do is, I see this SF. So what you can do is you can do a lookup, or in this case, I'm going to do an eval action equals case where conn state, right? Conn state, case conn state equals SF. That would be allowed. 1 equals 1 blocked. Is that, I think that's what they want. Allowed, blocked, yeah. I don't have teardown at this moment. I can put more in. I'll give one more example in just a second. For those who aren't familiar, you can use this 1 equals 1 as kind of an else statement. Kind of helps you deal with anything that is not accounted for. But now I've got blocked, allowed, etc. So now I have an action. So let's go grab a few other actions just because it's helpful for this situation. Stats account by conn state. So I got an S0, that's awesome. Oh, there we go, rejected. An OTH, that might actually be a teardown. So that gives me something else. We'll work with that. And so if I go and say conn state equals OTH, then that would be teardown. And now I have teardown as an option as well. And so what is this app? This app is going to be the application protocol, the traffic. I actually don't have that. If I go look at my Corelight logs, take that out. Closest thing I have is the service, and that's not really the app. But you know what? For this situation, sure, let's call it that. So, or I could just, I have two choices. I can not have an app. App is really useful for you're going to look at your correlation searches and see if you need them, and I kind of do. So the closest thing I've got, we just got to make it work, is eval app equals service. And then we're going to do a new fill null. Unknown, and that would be app. So if we don't have a service coming back, it'll come in as unknown. All right, so now I have those 5 fields in place. I'm going to need a whole bunch more fields, but I don't want to bore you to death going through every one of these fields. This is the general principle. I grab every one of them that I need, so I'm going to get down to dest IP, source, etc. But I'm going to just grab these first 5, so it gives you the principle of what I'm doing. Cool, I've made the conversion, but what I really need to do is every one of these fields needs to be handled with Splunk Magic. So we're going to come in here and we're going to go settings, and we're going to go fields. Oh, one of the things I would do, first thing I do is I'm going to manage an app. I'm going to build an app in my Splunk Enterprise Security that I can handle all this stuff. And so I'm just going to do create an app so I can set all my settings in there, and they're all maintained in one app. This will be L.A.M.E, YouTube, data models. Cool. It's not, that's what should be the folder name. YouTube data models. And we're going to keep the name at 1.0.0. We'll make it visible for now. Keeps all of my configs so that ES will work properly. All right, so I'm going to hit save. And I now have an app. We're going to come over here. We're going to go fields. We're going to do some aliasing. I always do this wrong. I probably shouldn't do this live demo. I should have it set, but it is what it is. So we're going to go and say field aliases. We're going to make a new field alias, and we're going to put this in my new app, YouTube. I'm sure it's visible to everyone else, but I don't see it here. L.A.M.E YouTube data models. And we're going to call this Corelight conn 2 network traffic. Easy enough. What I'm taking, you can call it whatever you want, but this helps me understand. I'm taking my Corelight logs, I'm getting them to become network traffic. And I can do this off source type or off source or host. In this case, source type works perfectly. We're going to go Corelight conn and the field aliases. And this should become, so what we do, so we come back here, we've already got them all documented for us. So orange bytes, that's my new field. And this is bytes in. Add another field, bytes out. And response bytes. And then that's not an eval, that's not an alias. Eval app equals service. And yep, the rest of these are situational. So that'll be good. We'll go ahead and close this, delete this, and we're gonna hit save. So there's my 3 fields, and they match up to those 3 there. That's why I write them out, so I keep track of them. I know exactly what I'm gonna do. I hit save. And we're gonna make sure we go Corelight conn. That'll bring it back, and make sure the permissions are global so that they can be used anywhere. I'm gonna read, and then I'm gonna write. Now I have made aliases there for those 3 fields. Now we still need to handle some of those other fields, so we're going to come down to fields. And instead, we're going to do calculated fields. And so we can do something like this, new calculated field. Put it in the YouTube app. L.A.M.E YouTube. Apply to the source type Corelight conn. Name of the field whose value will be calculated. And so in that situation, we're going to go bytes. And the eval expression is bytes in plus bytes out. The right place. That should be good. We need the bytes filled, and we need to turn it global. Permissions, all apps, read, write. All right, we need one more. And that would be this long guy here, action. So new field, Corelight conn. I can't type. Corelight conn, and that would be action. We just go with case. Copy the whole thing. Okay. And then if I get action taken care of here and turn it global, there's my action, permissions, make it global, read, write, hit save. And now if we come back to our search, we can just basically grab these. We know if it worked. By putting those 5 there. Now if I hit enter, wow, that didn't work. Give it some time. Biggest reason these don't work is you just have to give it enough time to let it propagate through the system. It can be very frustrating, but you just want to make sure. Grab, it is on Corelight conn. I didn't spell anything weird. Yep, and the easiest one, I mean, there's just not much you can mess up here on this. We'll grab the app, yeah. Take action off. And if I look at YouTube, Both of them are owned. There's just not much you can mess up there. So the fact that I don't have bytes coming back just tells me it hasn't propagated through the system yet. And so I'm going to put this on pause, wait a few minutes. The biggest issue is you just got to give it time, give it patience. It will take, and come back in a little bit. So I'll bring the video back and tell you how long I end up waiting. Well, I looked at that and I realized what I did wrong. So problem is this field isn't bytes in and bytes out because that field doesn't exist yet. You want to get it with the raw fields. And so we're going to switch this to orange bytes and response bytes. Save that. And then when I come over and hit my search, you'll notice action did come in. Now, app's going to take a minute to come in. These bytes are going to take a minute to come in. And I'm pretty sure I usually do this. I reversed them. We're going to go do fields just to validate. One of the ways I always check if I messed them up in the order. And so I'm looking for conn, Corelight, conn. There it is. It's global. What we do, I'm going to take one more field, id.orgh. See, these are the, and I'm going to switch it. ID orgh becomes source IP. And so one side is the new fields, the other side's the old fields. I never get them straight. I always mix them up. So I'm going to switch them. Whichever one comes back tells me what happened. All right, I'm going to pause it, come back, give it a few minutes when it's propagated through, and we'll see which way it's supposed to run. All right, so I flipped them. I had my order wrong. I always do it. It's the exact opposite way you write the query. You write bytes in becomes orange bytes, but the way you write it here is orange bytes becomes bytes in. If you do it that route, you wait a few minutes, you come back, hit your save, wait a few minutes. That's the key. It's not going to happen immediately. I've waited. I come in here, I press enter, and now these fields are, I have CIM compliant names inside my fields. They're being handled and so I actually have action app bytes, bytes in, bytes out. I'm not going to go through the process of getting the rest of these fields, but I will tell you what I'm done. I'll have a desk IP, desk port, direction, device. I'll probably have a flow ID in there. Not sure if I'll have SMP, but packets, packets in, packets out, protocol, source IP, source port, transport. So all of those fields will get put in there. Read the documentation if you're not quite sure what they are, but basically you just go down the list, add them to your table here that you want to show, and whichever ones don't, then you start going and looking at the raw data and find out what fields actually match, and whether you can do it with an eval, or whether you can do it, you have to do some case statements or some math, and you put those in. And that's all you got to do. This is a really long video. I'm going to now take you the next step. The next video in this will show you how to take the data I've done here and actually check it against the data model and everything. All right, hope you keep tuning in and hope this helps you move from being a lame analyst to a Splunk ninja.